新しい伝説が生まれようとしている。
Okay, so I know that this is a bit of a weird video for me to be doing, but, well, I was paying attention to E3 this year, and one of my favorite announcements of the entire thing also ended up being one of the most contentious for a certain video games community. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is a real fucking doozy of a game, and Nintendo is adding 5 DLC characters to the mix over the next year or so, and people are rightly very excited to see who these characters are. There's a lot of expectation put upon these characters to be really unique picks that also fill in a spot in the roster that feels right for Smash Bros. Being this huge celebration of games in general. So at E3 we got the Hero from Dragon Quest and Banjo-Kazooie from, well, you know where he's from. The Hero brought about a lot of confusion and frankly stupid-ass behavior from the Smash community, as they believe nobody plays Dragon Quest and that Dragon Quest has no place in Smash Bros.
I guess they've never heard of Japan.
But I'm not here to argue against those fools, I'm here for the rest of us. People that either got really, really excited at the reveal, or at the very least curious about this whole Dragon Quest thing after the whole big Smash thing. There's evidence of this happening too, with more and more posts coming up on the Dragon Quest Reddit from people curious about the series, and copies of Dragon Quest 4, 5, and 9 hitting the DS charts on Amazon all of a sudden. The timing for this is excellent too, as Dragon Quest XI's is on the horizon for Switch, the definitive version of a modern classic in the series. So with my about a year experience with the series, I'm going to talk to you about how best to approach this series as a newcomer, and maybe you as well will become a diehard of this outstanding franchise. So come on. And my first step for you is to watch a video about it. And hey, look at you, you're already doing great! This is my first step for getting into basically anything that's long running. And it's part of why I do this in general. If you're at all interested in the genre of tokusatsu, like Kamen Rider, Super Sentai, Ultraman, that stuff, check out some of the other videos in this here channel. But yeah, just do some research, watch some enthusiastic souls talk endlessly about the subject, and get why people love it. My personal favorite video on the Dragon Quest series is Tim Rogers' review of Dragon Quest XI from last year on Kotaku. It's like 40 minutes, but there's no spoilers, I promise. It's one of the best summations of why the series rules, and right after this video, you should go check it out. Tell Tim I sent you. I've watched other stuff on YouTube about the series, and there's a general high level of enthusiasm that I really dig about the community here, so you can't exactly go wrong with any of them. Step 2 was to get familiar with who makes the games. Hey, you might already be familiar. Have you played Chrono Trigger, watched Dragon Ball, and especially if you're familiar with my channel already, watched Godzilla vs. Biollante? If you answered to yes to any of these questions, then you have interacted with something that at least one of the quote-unquote Dragon Quest Trinity has worked on. This is another tip that works with basically any long-running series that may seem intimidating to you. See what the creators worked on before, it may surprise you. Akira Toriyama, the creator of Dr. Slump and Dragon Ball, does the character design for Dragon Quest, and it's like, relentlessly good. Yuji Horii did a lot of work on the scenario writing for Chrono Trigger, so if you like that game, you'd better stick around for whenever I suggest games for you to try. Dude's amazing. I have basically a whole section dedicated to him later, so just give me just a second. And, okay, last but 100% absolutely dead last, the least, there's Koichi Sugiyama. Who has a very complicated relationship to the series, putting forth some genuinely subpar work as of late for reasons that kinda deserve its own video, that Stop Skeletons from Fighting already did a great job of covering. The real reason I bring him up here is that he shares some pretty disgusting political views I won't detail here, and from what I can tell, there is at least some section of the Western and Eastern fan bases that are aware of this and are hoping for his eventual exit from a franchise. He's done some legendary work and everything, but the biggest way that this stink kind of manifests in the series lately is the MIDI soundtrack for the PS4 version of Dragon Quest XI, which feels fairly out of place with how gorgeous the everything else in that game is, and will thankfully be fixed with the new version in Dragon Quest XI S for Switch. It's orchestrated in that version and stuff, but Sorry to linger on a negative point there, but let's quickly move on. Sugiyama's not my favorite. Step 3. Don't approach it like Final Fantasy. If you're in the West like I am, and you're interested in JRPGs, you've likely already been familiar with Final Fantasy or some other JRPG series like Tales or Persona or something. The best advice I could possibly give you in this video is to not approach Dragon Quest like you would these series. Final Fantasy and other JRPGs like it are very over-the-top, very theatrical. Dragon Quest is not really like that. Dragon Quest is more like a good book. A really, really good book. Final Fantasy blows your mind with constant reveals and set pieces. Dragon Quest slowly builds to emotional climaxes. You chill out with Dragon Quest, live with the characters, and spend time thinking about where they're at and where they might be going. This more contemplative pacing makes it easy for the big, loud parts to have about 14 times more weight than they would in other games. Not to say that Dragon Quest is necessarily better than Final Fantasy. Final Fantasies 9, 7, and 10 are 3 of my favorite RPGs I've ever played. Dragon Quest just sneaks up on you a bit better is all. This is all due to Yuji Horí's excellent writing throughout the series. He's been heavily involved with every single mainline numbered entry, and it really shows. There's a growth that you can chart from game to game, where the plotting gets more and more complicated and, more importantly, confident. Fused with Toriyama's stellar, experienced character and monster design and Sugiyama's classical grand score, these games have a character and a feeling that's all their own. Though I will say, there are 2 JRPGs I actually would say would help you out in your approach to the series. If you are someone that actually played and loved the first Ni no Kuni for the PS3, soon for the Switch and other consoles, then Dragon Quest should actually come fairly naturally to you. Also, if you love the Mother games, fun fact, they're my favorite series of games, then you should at the very least check out one of the Dragon Quest games, as this series was the basis for Shigesato Itoi's initial parody and eventual twist on the Dragon Quest format. Step 4. Get familiar with the games. This isn't exactly just play the games, but more get familiar with their differences and pick from there. Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3 make up a trilogy centered around a character named Erdrick, or Loto if you're digging on that. Dragon Quest 1 is incredibly simple, but a landmark for the genre, being the first JRPG as we know it. It was derived from Horii wanting to take what was cool about games like wizardry and trying to make it simpler for the average player to enjoy. The story is really simple, but finishing it is super satisfying, and playing it feels like a genuine Crash Course history lesson, and it's only like 5 hours long. It's a really cool experience. Dragon Quest II adds party members, multiple enemy encounters, and a bit more involved story, and Dragon Quest III is more sophisticated on all fronts, inventing the job system that a lot of JRPG series like Final Fantasy would then iterate on. Dragon Quest III also has this really cool twist at the end that I think I'll actually avoid giving away for people. It's kind of commonly known, but why not? All I'll say is that it's definitely worth playing at least Dragon Quest 1 before 3 to get a lot out of it. Here's a maybe sort of twist for you. Out of this initial trilogy, I've only played the first game. I want to get to the other ones very soon, but this kind of just illustrates my point. You can know a good deal about these games and kind of know what you're getting into, so you can pick out the ones you want to tackle in any order you want. It's fun to have this kind of knowledge in your pocket, and that knowledge is all you really need with a bit of personal experience to make some solid recommendations. Dragon Quest 4, 5, and 6 make up the Zenithian trilogy, which is more based around a single location, being the country of Zenithia. This is where the scenario writing by Horii really gets to stretch its legs and do some work. 4 has a really interesting pace where it starts with 4 introductory chapters, drip-feeding backstories for all of the supporting cast members of the game, before Chapter 5, where you actually get to play as the protagonist of the game. You pick up all of your party members and then go to defeat the villain. This game was on the NES, and it blows my mind every time I think about it. It's such a sophisticated plotline for a game from that era. 5 is really unique, and after 3, it's the next real watershed moment for the series. It's a game where you follow the protagonist through his entire life, from his childhood to his adulthood, as a father to his own children. And that's kind of all you need to know about that game, to know that it's unique and special. It's a beloved story by the fan base, and it's even getting a theatrical film adaptation in Dragon Quest Your Story, coming out later this year. 6 is, from what I can tell, a bit of a dark horse in the series, but it has a really cool dual-world story concept, and it marks the return of the job system from 3 and has its own very dedicated fans, so this is definitely not one to gloss over either. After this point, the progression of the series gets pretty weird, but this is also where I think things get super interesting, so it's all good. 7 is a game about time travel and venturing from island to island, solving various problems that the residents are going through. It kind of works like a long-running anime, where you're going through various arcs and helping out new casts of characters along the way. The main quest for the game is also notoriously long, just Jesus fucking Christ. 8 is a collaboration with Level 5, the folks that brought you Dark Cloud, Ni no Kuni, and Yokai Watch. It's the first game with voice acting and 3D graphics. This game is considered yet another monumental moment for the series, and it's probably the first one a lot of people would probably suggest you try out. 9 and 10 have more of a multiplayer element. 9 is for the DS and made a lot of use out of the DS's link play feature, letting players jump into each other's games and help them out with dungeons and loot chests and junk. It's a super cool and unique idea for the series. It still has its own story, however, and the setup for it is truly unique, with you playing as a Celestian, a sort of guardian angel for a village that's been mysteriously stripped of your guardian angel status. There were a bunch of DLC dungeons and gear that were distributed through the DS Wi-Fi connection that's possibly lost at this point, but apparently recently a private server has been unearthed, so you can actually access that stuff again. I'm not entirely sure, and I've not gotten it to work myself, but there's that, I guess. 10 is an MMO for the fucking Wii that was enormously successful, and it actually came to PC, 3DS, Wii U, and Switch. So, but we in the West can't play it for right now. It's not translated, they haven't brought it over here, so let's just stick a pin in that for right now. Maybe us Westerners will get to play it eventually. So now we get to 11. 11 is a masterpiece and my personal favorite of the ones I've played so far. It's nice and long, but it doesn't get dull for even a moment. It's got one of the best casts of any game I've ever played, and the story has a ton of impact and doesn't let up once it really starts rolling. It's spectacular and shaping up to only get better with 11S in September. I can't wait to jump back in. Step 5, my personal recommendation. I've kind of lost my metaphor, because this isn't really a step, but whatever. Okay, so this has already gone a little bit too long, so I'm going to try and wrap it up really quickly. My personal recommendation to you, dear viewer, is to take your time and soak this all in. Do your research, get in deep, and start playing. I would personally get either Dragon Quest 1 or 4 on your iPhone or Android device. The mobile ports are actually really great, and surprisingly, in the case for 4, it's actually the best version we can get our hands on in the States, as it has a bunch of optional dialogue that was cut out of the DS version. Those are both simpler, historic games that will be easy to get into and won't be too overwhelming for you as a newcomer, because some of the longer ones are genuine mammoths, and starting with one of those might be a kind of a death knell for a newcomer. After this, just chill out with the hero in Super Smash Bros. Take in all the fun, cheeky references, the, hopefully, cool spirits will expose you to some tight-ass Toriyama designs, and finally in September, jump into Dragon Quest XI-S when it comes out. It's designed for newcomers. It's designed for you. They made it for you, just for you. At this point, just don't even bother getting the original version of 11, since S is going to be adding a new orchestrated soundtrack, new story content, bunch of new stuff. Just chill out with that game, enjoy it, savor it, have a lot of fun with it. It'll love you back, I swear. And then just keep going. Also, don't miss out on that 11 post-game. It's outstanding. And finally, my last recommendation to you, step 6, find a close friend to dive in with you. This was invaluable for me. This is a big ol' honkin' huge thing to get into, and as well as overwhelming, it could feel lonely getting into it totally alone. Being the only person into something isn't very much fun, and also if you're anything like me, huge fandom environments like Twitter tags, Discords, forums, feel a little much. So finding a friend that's into JRPGs as well, and hopefully they'll be willing to dive in with you. Talk with them through your Dragon Questing, discuss story points and favorite characters, talk about how cool Pisaro's final form is, it's really fucking cool, and just bond over this whole thing. I know I did with my friend Wyatt, and it's one of the things we talk about the most with each other. It's such a treasure trove of cool friend junk. I love it. Now, almost a year after we got into 11 together, I'm making this video, and he's doing a thing on Twitter where he's quickly doodling every single named character and monster from the series in order. Every single weekday. That's fucking crazy. So send him some love and give him a follow, and damn it, that's it. That's all I have to say. That's all I can possibly say to beginners on Dragon Quest. I don't want to speak to you anymore. Go away. But if you want to listen to me talk more, and you're open to getting into a new genre of film and television, stick around. I talk about tokusatsu usually on this channel, sometimes other stuff like this. This is an outlier. This is an other stuff thing. And yeah, so for anyone that is a regular on this channel, the Ultraman episode of Explode When Defeated is coming very soon. I am working on it. I finished the script. We are rolling on it. So if you like this video, you know, give it a like. If you want to subscribe, do that. That's awesome. I'd love that. That would be great. And if you want to give money directly into my pocket so I can pay off my pre-order of Dragon Quest XI-S Echoes of an Elusive Age for the Nintendo Switch, then do that through Patreon. I'd love that, and I would love you if you did that. Don't give to the $1,000 tier. That is a joke.